We want them to share their experiences. Our expo is not just to present new trends and products. This is also a panel for very acute and fruitful discussions on hot issues. And of course, international manufacturers occupy a very big space in our expo, and for them, importing into Russia is quite an important issue. We have invited our next speaker, Evgeny Fadeev, CEO, Russian International Logistics Alliance. Yeah.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги, друзья. Фадеев Евгений, коммерческий
Hello,
директор.
distinguished friends. I am CEO of the Logistics Alliance ACEX. We will speak a lot today about documents and procedures. You will be able to receive our blanks, our paperwork that we will discuss today, and I will share my contacts at the end of my presentation. Today we are having a very important session in this online combined format. We involve exponents, we involve participants, we have the exponents on clothing, on many solutions. So we will talk today about your input. Probably you are a potential importer, or probably you want to enhance your business being a domestic supplier, but you want to have also some importing products, and you want to import goods as soon as possible. First issue you will have are the documents you will need to import all your cargoes, to import all your shipments. You will need to prepare paperwork for customs clearance. In this slide, you see the list of documents provided to declarants for customs clearance. So we will look at this list, packing list, contract, external contract, contract appendix, which can include different items. We will also need specification as per the contract or agreement, also the passport of transactions, as well as shipment agreement, the technical description of the product, and others. We will not look into each of the documents. We will only focus on a number of the most important of them. We will tell you more today about this process. If you need those templates of these documents, I will be able to provide them to you. For example, an invoice or a packing list, these are quite similar documents. In both the invoice and the packing list, you have the description of the item, yet an invoice is a commercial document which has a particular number. It includes information on seller and buyer. It also includes full information on your product. The packing list includes a description of the packaging of your cargo, as well as the method of shipping. The first thing you need to consider is to ask your potential seller or the company from which you want to buy something. You need to request those two documents, an invoice and a packing list. And of course, the data in these two documents will need to be identical. After your exporter provided the documents, after they've been issued, and if you want to sell this product domestically, if you want to import it periodically and then sell it domestically, for that you will need to have an external contract with this shipper, with this supplier. You have this first page of a template contract in the slide. We won't, of course, look into each of the items in the contract yet. I'd like to mention that an external trade contract includes a number of important terms and conditions. They are related to both import and export. They include the subject of the agreement. It can be a supply of goods or some technical clothing or curtains. It can include the total value of the transaction, and of course the volume. It can be one batch if you're just importing one-off, or the batch can be split into several containers, into several mixed shipments or wagons. You can discuss in this contract a very extensive list of terms and conditions that are needed in terms of time of delivery. For example, if it is a periodic shipment or a weekly shipment, or is just a shipment within a concrete period, including within 1 month or 1 year or something else. You will also need to pay attention to a very important item in the contract, which is about packaging type. And of course, this packaging includes marking and labeling. The packaging issue in the contract is included in the contract as a separate item because pallets can be damaged, as well as other types of packaging can also be damaged in the field of the process of transportation for containers. Containers can even drop into the sea or be damaged otherwise. Of course, a lot of other things can happen during shipping. For example, pallets may be detached and may be further damaged with damaging the cargo itself. You don't need just to describe the packaging in the right way. You need to thoroughly discuss the packaging itself with the seller, but we'll discuss it a bit later. You will also pay attention to such a point, such an item as guarantee obligations. Speaking about such sensitive goods as clothing or curtains, as well as products for designers, you need to understand that at a particular point, if you import a product with one appearance, and if you sell a differently looking product, then you might face a number of claims that it will lead to a number of other factors, to a number of other issues, including breach of delivery time and others. And you need to pay attention to all these issues when you make a contract. In this contract, you will need also to include such conditions as contract production, which includes meeting a number of obligations, meeting a number of obligations in terms of productions. In Asian countries, we have dedicated obligations. Sometimes in the local market, we don't always consider local holidays or other or a different context in countries like India or Pakistan. We have in Iran and other countries. If you don't consider that, you may face a number of issues such as breach of supply terms and delay in further contract execution. Of course, if you don't have it in the external contract, that if it's not contractual, then of course it won't be a real practical delay. This is especially important for contract manufacturing. It influences everything that is quite important, and of course it's quite relevant to be discussed by both parties to the agreement, and it has to be agreed by both parties too. Yet of course it may include other stakeholders as well. Insurance is another important point when you deal with big batches, major batches, with invoicing amounting to several $100,000. You need to think about risks, and those risks you need to insure. You can insure risks, you can insure your obligations, as well as transport. If you buy a product from an international supplier, and in case there is an insurance claim, then, for example, if there is some damage to the product, like bugs finding their way inside the packaging, then in this case the insurance company may compensate your damage. This is one of the most important, important cornerstones of working between buyer and seller. You don't need just discuss those items. You need to include and try to consider all those items in the contract. Force majeure, as we call it, or will of God, or circumstances sometimes happen during the execution of the contract. Of course, you need to pay attention to them in terms of delays, in terms of actual breach of the contract. Yet, of course, you need to understand and consider that there are situations when people are in lockdown, for example, when they cannot go and do their job. So that was the framework, the legal framework that prevented them from working, and that might lead to a delay. All this could lead to a lot of penalties and lead to the final demise of the business. Of course, there is a lot of debate. There is a lot of debate on how to consider the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it is a force majeure event, a force majeure circumstance or not. There is no common opinion on that. We need to look into individual cases according to local realities. In our country, Chamber of Commerce and Industry is taking part in discussing this process with other stakeholders in other countries. When you contract with other international companies, you will also need to focus on a number of other factors. You need to focus on the arbitrage procedure. If there is an issue, if there is a problem, then you need to find this spot, not find this place of court action to address those claims. Of course, it's not possible to very often to do that if you don't know local legal specifics of a local context, for example, in China. So you just need to understand that you will need probably to have support from other external stakeholders to understand whether the cargo is damaged while it is in our country, while in other countries it is very complicated. Probably you will need, when you make a contract, to stick to the local legal framework. After you choose the product you need, you understand that this product is in demand in the market, you have drafted the invoice, the banking list, you also drafted the external trade contract, you after that sign it. So the next stage here is what we call choosing the selection of a partner. So we need this partner that will help us on this long road of importing the product from its point of origin to the point of sale. We of course consider the interests of various stakeholders, including designers and others. It's quite important to select such a partner. We are speaking about standard forwarding, yet the transporting process involves not only forwarders, but also carriers. There are also customs authorities, brokers. In our case, the preferred scheme is to use a partner forwarder, as we call it. You need to choose a forwarder in the right way because the market is extensive. It's quite simple. There are online channels. There are recommendations, feedback from shippers and consignees. We really feel that some forwarders can focus on a specific market in Europe or Asia. In other markets, they probably won't be able to understand the current context. So you will need to spend, to invest your time and effort to pick the right company, to shortlist those potential partners. You will be able to draft this list, and then you will be able to take the final action, final decision. You will need to consider that not all forwarders will be ready to meet your obligations, meet your requirements when you nominate as a client, as a customer, when you set those requirements, for example, on a specific mode of transport, or a specific mode of packaging, or a method of delivery. These are the issues that you will need to discuss with a potential forwarder, and you will need to pay as much attention to it as possible. Then after that, after you choose a contractor, you will need to think about insuring your cargo. I've already mentioned that the transportation process from various geographies implies that you will have to monitor, to track your shipment all in. Yet in terms of insurance, you will be protected against potential losses. You will also consider, you will also remember that a forwarder that you select, you can oblige it to be liable for pickup of cargo, for packaging, for handling. Many shippers very often are not ready to track or provide any guarantees. Although we have the 21st century and we can actually make a video call and understand what is happening with your cargo. But be prepared that if it's not possible, it is a matter of suspicion for all of you. And of course, there are contracts that have the value of several hundreds of thousands of dollars. In such contracts, you need to consider that in Russia, including using railway transport, we have such a service as security services. And if we move from Europe, we can provide such services as customer transportation, customs transportation, bonded transportation provided by customs carrier with security provided. This is relevant for costly cargoes. If you import clothing or decorative elements that are fragile and valuable at the same time, if these items can actually feel damage because of the damage of the product and the packaging, then you will need to think thoroughly about some individual conditions for packaging of these shipments. When you choose a contractor which you want to use to import your goods, to go down this road to import goods into Russia, then after that you need to think about your contractual relationships. Before that, you will have a foreign trade contract and you will need to make arrangements on having a packing list and an invoice with the shipment, as well as a list of other documents that we saw at the beginning of the presentation. These documents will be required for customs clearance. For customs, we have it. For forwarding services, you will need a separate contract with the forwarding agency, forwarding company. You will be able to approve it and make it at different stages. You will need first to quote the price, to ask for the quoting of a price on delivery and customs clearance. You will also need probably to have a certificate from this company. We don't have dedicated local licenses yet for this is for forwarding, for transportation, but for railway deliveries, for road deliveries, you need to have dedicated licenses. That is why if we go one step back, we need to consider that such an approach of acquiring these certificates is important. So you need to probably stick to working with a forwarder because they offer more extensive expertise and they have a broader portfolio of services. You will also need to approve an agreement with a forwarding company, and when you do that, you will need to consider that we have a dedicated law on forwarding and transport services, and this agreement should be complying with this law. If you work with an international partner, if a shipment moves until the moves beyond Russia and moves closer to the Russian border, then your liability will be limited to the contract itself. The same is relevant for working with a forwarder. And also, you might face further benefits, which is a zero VAT rate for international transportation. To have this zero VAT rate and to use it, there are a number of conditions. First of all, you will need a contract, and you will also need to confirm that this transportation service is international service, which is to include a point of dispatch beyond Russia, and it needs to be. It also will need to include all the services that are included in the same document, so that a 0% VAT is used for all these services. And of course, you will need to provide all these documents to confirm the zero VAT rate in the tax authority. The next important point is to agree on further work with a forwarding company. A forwarding company is a business that have their own priorities in terms of volume, pricing, and their approaches. If you don't arrange everything beforehand, you might face a situation of a completely different services from what you expected. This means you need to be careful in working with these companies. Initially, you probably won't require quite superior service from them, or probably expect a superior service when you have low prices. We also need to understand that we are located in the Russian Federation. Import and export operations are the procedures that are 100% legal, and it's very hard to avoid staying within the legal framework in performing these operations. This means that in terms of the Russian legislation, you need to understand that you will have to use automated counting systems, and you then will have to provide full documentation for the authorities in case of a check of an audit. We are moving closer to our conclusion, to my today's statement. Before, if you want to ask your questions, of course, we collect your questions. At the end of my presentation, I'd like to point out a few bottlenecks in import and export operations of Russia into Russia. First thing is what I mentioned at the beginning. Before selecting your seller, before selecting a party with which you want to make the foreign trade agreement, you want to make an invoice and a packing list, you will need to check to prove that is a proven supplier in China, in South Korea. With these suppliers, you might arrange certain requirements and receive a shipment of inferior quality, or even an empty cargo, an empty box. You will always need to check your counterparts, check the feedback, check the rating in such resources as Alibaba or other marketplaces. The next point is payment terms. Our COVID-19 situation was complicating our business, and it was complicating the business of both private and major factories, major manufacturers. For many of them, doing business became impossible. Of course, crooked companies are almost everywhere. There are very many websites, fraudulent websites, phishing websites, and it's really very easy to do such a fraud, buying fake bank guarantees. Of course, you are 100% sure in your counterpart, and then you probably can have an advance payment of 30%. You will need to do whatever it takes to act carefully for our importers, for our customers. We suggest paying a lot of attention to check suppliers, to check counterparts, and of course you will have your payments processed by an ecosystem of your banks that can handle accreditives, lines of credit, guarantee letters. Of course, you just need not send money to somewhere and then lose it altogether. What are the key factors for you to consider in this regard? A supplier might not be able to reply service requests, or might do their businesses intransparently. Then, of course, it is a matter of concern. So, of course, you will need to be very careful in choosing a supplier. And, of course, your customs document need to be quite specific. They need to be exact. And, of course, if a customs authority wants to have some additional documentation from the factory, from Europe, from Latin American country, or from China, you want to be sure that these documents can be easily obtained and transferred to customs agencies, to customs authorities for the customs clearance. In conclusion, I'd like to mention that when you want to sell this product, if you understand that this product is in demand in the market, and if you understand all the risks that you will have to pay VAT, that you will have to pay a customs fee, you need to remember about that. If you understand that the goods you want to buy from an international seller, if you understand that these products won't be sold well in the Russian market, you need to think twice before making a foreign trade contract. My advice, my guideline is that for you to be quite specific and quite sure about the demand for a product and about your potential product opportunity for me to deliver this presentation. Thank you, Evgeny. Just a few questions on your input. The first thing is that we have a lot of international participants in the expo today. They want to work with the market. They want to organize our supply channels. And we also have this specific temporary import arrangement. What is the situation now? For example, now we had to deliver all the expo materials by all the participants. They did it themselves. We are currently working to simplify this process. In our company, we always try to explain to our customers all risks in terms of temporary import, for especially for concerts, for expos. There is a dedicated customs regime for those products that are imported and then re-exported out of the Russian territory. And of course, there is no risks in making alteration to this product. If you need more information about that, our specialists will be handy in providing specific consultation, specific advice on your event at Crocus, at expo halls. Of course, it's quite possible to provide such a regime. We have this experience, and of course, for international companies, for international private individuals, we can organize this process, and we've had an extensive track record. One more question. Many Russian participants, many companies are currently developing their exports out of Russia. There are a number of governmental support policies, and I know that they are developing this customs warehouse area. Bonded warehouses are being organized, are being developed and designed. This is a very interesting question. This is quite a nice way to replicate international experiences at the moment. In many countries, there are free economic zones. In Russia, we already have them. We started creating them like 10-15 years ago, and we already have them at the moment. They are currently up and running in the Russian market. Many companies are moving beyond imports. They are localizing their production facilities locally. Of course, international suppliers, national companies have their dedicated requirements in terms of quality for their products. Of course, in such situations as COVID or holidays, if we don't count that in, if we don't consider these circumstances, you might face a very big penalty. Free economic zones they localize the product and make it more accessible, more available in the local market, and of course becomes cheaper. For bonded warehouse, it is quite a leapfrogging action. In Tatarstan, they're currently developing this approach by a pool of stakeholders. We are tracking their progress, and we really hope that they will be successful in implementing this project. It will lead to better flow of products inbound. These are the products that were delivered by the Russian Post, and the transit delivery time was not that big. A bonded warehouse is to address this issue. The product will be important. Then after that, we will be able to pick up the cargo after we pay the customs fee to the bonded warehouse. Of course, for marketplaces, for digital marketplaces, it is beneficial. Of course, as we move forward, we will have similar experiences not only in Tatarstan but also in other regions of our vast country, because we feel that these trends are quite interesting. We will learn from the requirements of entrepreneurs, of cargo owners. They want just to gain this momentum. If we have these more of these bonded houses, bonded warehouses, they will be able to enhance their volumes. We now have imports. We also are developing export opportunities. We feel that our export capacities will be growing in the next 5 years. Probably the growth will be 10 to 50%, 10 to 15% year on year. Thank you, Evgeny. That was a very interesting experience, and it's quite a fruitful and informative insight that we heard from you today. And for our exponents, for our participants, probably it seems now that the process is not that complicated. Yes, it's not that complicated. You just need to consider all the risks. And of course, you need to be able to arrange as many points beforehand or initially. We have a lot of cargoes, a lot of shipments. We try to look into different cases, and we always understand that in the majority of cases, in the majority of potential new importers, they just don't know how to do that, and we try to educate them. I really hope that such an event in the framework of Haim Textile will be an eye-opener for some of the participants, about some of the companies. We try to provide fast solutions to our customers in any circumstance. We just